but we'll begin in a minute. If sir will permit. Sir, should we wait for a few more children?
Your wish, it is your show.
Yeah, all right, sir. All right, all right. So we'll wait for 2-3 more minutes and then we'll begin. Dheeraj ma'am, just send a reminder to the teachers, to the class teachers who have not joined. It's 10:03. Sonia, should we begin?
Yes, ma'am, I think we can begin.
Achha. Sir, should we begin then?
Yes, yes. As I said, it's your show. You decide.
Okay, 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 sir. Mustafa ji, I'm not able to start my video again. There is some problem.
You have started now.
It's not clicking there at that point where it is start video.
Well, it is enabled now, so if you can start, I think you will be
all right.
Again, be able to see
you. Yeah. All right. So let's begin. So we have 85 participants. So once again, I will just I welcome you all, and I will just, before starting, I just want to tell you how the flow of this webinar will go. First, welcome address by Anita Gupta, then a talk by Dr. Pant, then question answer session. Children can post their queries, questions there in the chat box. Question answer session will be taken up by Sonia Verghese, and vote of thanks in the end by Sonia Verghese. All right, so here we begin. Respected Principal Ma'am, dear teachers and dear students, today we are privileged to have amongst us Professor M. Pant, a renowned personality who has not only excelled in the field of education, but also excelled to promote entrepreneurs in new age of technologies. Professor M. Pant is a PhD in computational physics with a professional degree in law. He has taught at MNIT Allahabad, University of Western Ontario, Canada, IIT Kanpur, and Indira Gandhi National Open University. He has been deeply associated with the IT system, having his PhD from IIT Roorkee, being a faculty for about a decade at IIT Kanpur, and a member of Board of Management IIT Delhi for 6 years. After a long innings of 50 plus years as an academic researcher, a lawyer, and an educational entrepreneur, he is now exploring new pedagogy, technology, and curricula for the future, with a focus on artificial intelligence driven period heralding the fourth industrial age. His mission to promote public understanding of emerging technologies. His special focus is on mobile, WhatsApp based lifelong learning, transcending traditional education and blending personalized and social learning. Some of his current educational initiatives are computational thinking, making sense of artificial intelligence, coming of age in fourth industrial age, smart parenting, unleashing latent talent, promoting entrepreneurship, in particular teacherpreneurs. Today, the world struggles to understand the cause and effect of COVID-19 pandemic and ways to lessen the gravity of its long-term implications. The advancement in the field of biological sciences have taken the center stage. Therefore, the scope of quantum biology gains prominence like never before, as it could possibly offer a deeper understanding of genetic compositions, replication processes, and mutations in the microbes. So let us hear from Dr. Pant to get initiated into this exciting field of science. Over to Dr. Pant.
So thank you, Anita ma'am, for this introduction and building on the subject. I first want to assure the students this is not like a typical lecture or a class or a subject-based lecture. This is actually more a conversation to build in you an appetite for wonder. And that is the main purpose, so that you are curious, you ask questions. In a traditional education, you are required to answer questions. In this session, you have to ask questions. You don't have to know the answers, and you can find out the answers in due course. I've taken the future of biology as the theme for provoking this curiosity and desire to ask questions and the sense of wonder, because as Anita ma'am has said, this is now going to be the time for biology. You know, like in a theater, the spotlight shines on certain actors at certain points of time. The spotlight is on biology now. And if anybody has any doubts about it, you saw in the beginning of 2020, the term virus became a household word. And if virus is not a biological object, what else is? So this is where I want to sort of talk to you about. But let me give a little bit of things. Look at the date today. The date today is 24th February. And very soon, 4 days from now, we celebrate in India what is called Science Day. National Science Day is celebrated on 28th. And from time to time, there have been focus on the topic of the year for that Science Day. And clearly the topic this year ought to be biology, because that is what we are all talking about and facing it. And the Science Day is after the birthday of C.V. Raman, who got the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930 for Raman effect, which is a very, very profound thing in terms of this field of physics, and it was a quantum phenomena. And it is not only that. See, in fact, Raman was a very great popularizer of science also. I'll encourage all students who are oriented towards Google and so on, please Google for the thing called Why the Sky is Blue. This is a beautiful lecture talk written by C.V. Raman, and is all about how scattering happens and so on. And as you know, Raman got his Nobel Prize for creating Raman scattering. And let me also, apart from the physics part of it, tell you that Raman scattering has a huge application today in detecting all kinds of things, because most molecules have a characteristic vibrational frequency of theirs, and that can be seen by the Raman effect. And therefore, Raman effect is a very practical tool as well. Almost, if you remember the story of Archimedes, where the king had given a piece of gold for making a crown, and when the thing came, he was not sure whether the goldsmith has adulterated the gold with other things, and he asked Archimedes to find out whether this is pure gold without doing anything to it, with non-destructive thing. And Archimedes used the principle of the relative density of gold being such that it will show up in whatever measurement is done. Similarly, Raman spectroscopy is where you see a characteristic spectrum of a molecule, etc., and you can use it to detect whether it is there or not. Another interesting part is that just about a month back, we celebrated Republic Day. Although the Republic Day parade is more about the pomp and show of aircrafts and weaponry and so on, the Republic Day itself is about India adopting the Constitution. And the Indian Constitution is probably the only one in the world where there is a duty on all of us as citizens of the country, given under Directive Principles, Article 51A(h), to build a scientific temper, a spirit of inquiry, and reform. So I could say, in a sense, that this lecture is towards fulfilling the constitutional duty of building into you the spirit of inquiry, a scientific temper, and of course, as I said, the spirit of reform as well. So this is why it is very interesting and important and timely that we are talking about this. Now, you have seen that STEM is a very popular phrase nowadays used: science, technology, engineering, maths. This emphasizes the importance of current technology and engineering. In fact, some people have added to it art and called it STEAM, STEAM. But nowhere is biology explicitly stated. Now, you can say that in science, biology is also included, but you know that what they mean when they are talking of the science technology is really coding, computer thing, making apps, so on and so forth, as the very important thing, and that is getting a lot of attention. But it is biology which is more interesting, and I will tell you why biology did not receive so much attention, because it is probably the most complex subject. Most of the subjects are much simpler compared to biology. And I will begin with the story. Almost 350 years ago, you've heard of Newton and the apple, and Newton having thought of gravity when the apple fell. And some people are also relating it to the pandemic, saying that that was done when there was a pandemic going on, and he was forced out of Cambridge to be in his home, and in his home he was under the tree, and then he saw the apple fall, and he talked about gravity and so on. Actually, Galileo had before that, almost 100 years before that, demonstrated something which was very spectacular. People believed that a heavier object will fall faster than a lighter object. And Galileo, for the first time, actually took up some things on top of the Tower of Pisa and dropped them, and found that they dropped at the same time, irrespective of the mass or weight of the object. This itself was surprising. Almost 100 years later, Newton kind of started looking at the explanation, and he talked about this gravitational theory and the force of attraction and the apple falling. So let me get the story back to you. So it is said that Newton saw that apple fall, and then it occurred to him that this is a universal gravitational force which is there between between that apple and earth, between the earth and the moon, and the sun and the earth, and so on and so forth. This thing. Now, I assume most of you are in class 9, 10, whatever, and therefore have done class 8 physics. In class 8 physics, they would have told you how much time does the apple take to fall from the tree to the earth. So let us say the height of the apple in the apple tree is, let's say, 16 feet. So you know the formula is h is equal to half gt squared. In FPS, g is 32 feet per second squared. And if I'm saying 16 feet as the height, then 16 is equal to half gt squared. So the time taken for the apple to fall from a height of 16 feet would be 1 second. Very nice. If this thing was at 12 feet, what would be the height be? It would be 12 is equal to 16 gt squared, therefore square root 3 upon 2. Square root 3 is 1.732, therefore 0.866 seconds. What if the tree was apple was at an 8-foot height? Then it would be 8 is equal to 16 gt square, and 8 upon 16, 1 upon 2, square root 1 upon 2, and which is therefore 1.414 divided by 2.707. I did all this to tell you that it is much simpler to calculate the time that it takes for the apple to fall to the earth from a certain height. But this is a thing in physics. But the more difficult question, and the question from biology, is how did the apple get there in the first place? How much time did it take for the apple to go from the ground? Because if Newton is saying everything must fall to the earth, how did the apple go against the gravity force and move up? And how much time did it take from the seed of the apple to the fruit of the apple? This is biology. It is far more difficult than physics, which I could do mental calculation, tell you 1 second, square root 3 upon 2 seconds, half 1 upon root 2 seconds, I could do it mentally instead. But to explain how the tree actually came and how the apple really went up the tree is a much more complex subject of biology. And the entire cycle from seed to tree to fruit to flower to fruit, the whole cycle. And the important question, think over it. Why does only a ripe apple fall and not an unripe? And not only for apple, applies to all fruits. So why do ripe fruits fall under gravity and those which are not ripe yet don't fall? This is biology. It's not easy to answer. And this is why I'm trying to tell you that although we are talking, and I have myself background is physics, so I am from physics, but you realize that physicists only do easy things. It may look to you that physics is very difficult, but in real terms, physicists do only simple things. There used to be a joke about physicists that when a set of farmers had some problem, not this farmer agitation, but they had problem with agriculture, growing crops, their livestock, and so on. Now, mostly farmers have fruits and vegetables and livestock. Sometimes they have chicken and cows and all this kind of thing. So they went to some of the brilliant physicists and asked them to help them solve the problems. So after several months, the physicists came with a report, and the title of the report, the first sentence of the report was, "Let us imagine a spherical cow." Now they imagine a spherical cow because the surface area is 4 pi r square, the volume is 4 upon 3 pi r cube, but no cow is a spherical cow. Real life is very different from the ideals which physicists have been taking and using to solve the problem. They have simple pendulum, this, that, whatever. Point charge, point mass. You don't have a point charge, you don't have a point mass, you will have things else in reality. So biology is very interesting and is actually far more complex than physics. And therefore, it is only now that we are beginning to understand this in some sense. Just to complete the story, many people have a mistaken notion that it is Newton who discovered gravity. Newton did not discover gravity. Newton only discovered a method to calculate the gravitational force. But how does the force occur? Why does it occur, etc., was left to Einstein to do in 1915 in his general theory of relativity. There's a 300-year gap between being able to calculate what gravity does and to understand what gravity is. And I'm saying this to basically tell you that the story of finding out things are long stories. And people have to be patient, and sometimes things that we don't know for hundreds of years get resolved, understood, and so on and so forth. And I will kind of, back to the story that now is the moment of biology and we are beginning to understand biology. But I talked about physics. Let me talk about chemistry. Now, again, I think the classes that you are in, you have heard of the phenomenon called photosynthesis. And you have also been probably told the equation for photosynthesis. I think it is something like 6H2O plus 6CO2 is equal to C6H12O6 plus 6O2. So we say from the water and the carbon dioxide with light, we are able to get glucose and oxygen. The chemical equation is fine. But if you take a bottle of soda from your fridge and shine light on it, it has carbon dioxide, it has H2O, you're shining light on it, it will not turn to Sprite or Fanta or anything. It will remain like that. To turn to glucose, something more is required, and that is biology. So photosynthesis is more than the chemical equation. Chemical equation is very nice, 6CO2, 6CO2. You take out a soda water bottle, put a light on that, the carbon dioxide does not turn into glucose. To turn it into glucose, you need a biological phenomenon called photosynthesis. So what I wanted to really share with you is this excitement about biology. And so far, most of biology that you've been taught is descriptive. Mostly what we do in biology today is still taxonomy. So if you're doing zoology, you're told vertebrates and invertebrates. If you're doing botany, you're told gymnosperms and angiosperms. But we are now talking functional. And this is where things really become interesting. When you start looking at not just the description, going beyond description, a bit into structure, and then into function, and then you try to explain the function, you find out that many interesting things are happening. And just to shortcut this to give you the answer, so photosynthesis is a quantum phenomenon. I told you that merely shining light on this doesn't happen. It has to go through all those various elements which are in a leaf or a green plant or whatever, where the actual transformation of the chemical reaction happens. Another very important thing that happens, even when we look at, so one of the first things about biology really is life. So the way when we, if you remember very early, we were, what is the distinction between living things and non-living things? And as you look at it, the first distinction that you see, you find that very soon they are not right. So if you say that living things move, then there can be non-living things also which move. The car moves, the train moves, the aeroplane actually even flies, and so on and so forth. So you find that this becomes a very interesting thing. And this question has been asked for a long time, hundreds of years. And we're talking in terms of biological sense. So I will just give you the names of some of the people who have talked about it. Those of you who are Google-oriented can Google for. One of the first lectures which I heard was from George Wald. He was a Nobel Prize winner in medicine. And I heard a lecture from him in terms of life as we know it. And he was talking about life as we know it on Earth, but could there be other forms of life? And those of you, I'm sure many of you children are curious, you've been following the mission to Mars and the Perseverance and so on. One of the things they're looking for is origin of life in Mars. And this field is called astrobiology. What I wanted to share with you is that don't think of biology as only for medical things and becoming a doctor. I think in common parlance in school, it is called medical stream and non-medical stream. So those who study biology are called medical stream. Those who don't study biology, no, biology is way, way beyond medical. Medical is just one aspect of biology. Just like, or many other sciences also, even in physics, being a computer engineer is one aspect of physics. There are so many other aspects where physicists also work. Similarly, biology, there's so many other, and now it is growing more and more. So one of the very important aspects which I wanted to kind of draw attention to is this thing. So when we look at life, so George Wald is one of the first one, that J.B.S. Halden was a geneticist who actually came to India, left England, was there in Jadavpur University and so on. He's also very well known. He also wrote a book on life, but he was looking more at the origin of life. You see, the first thing which is wonderful is that can life come out of non-living stuff? Now, many of us with a religious disposition and such things are told that life form is something very special given by God and then given away and then taken away and so on. Scientists say none of the sort. Life manifests itself when certain conditions are fulfilled, and death occurs when certain other conditions are fulfilled. It is not Yamaraj coming in as Bhaisa and taking you away. All that is stories. It is actually complex organismal things. And this is what people are trying to understand: life, aging, and death. And that is why I said biology is most important, because if nothing else, you have your body to know about. If you study physics, you study about electron and proton and neutron and where are you going to meet the proton and where you're going to meet the neutron. But biology, you're living with every day and night. And therefore, it is very important. See, I seriously feel that instead of maths being compulsory, it is biology which should be compulsory. What kind of a person are you if you have no idea about how your heart works, your liver works, your lungs work, your kidneys work, your brain works? Everything coming from your brain eventually. And if you have no idea of what your brain is like, the cortex and the hippocampus and this thing, then what is the use of knowing Pythagoras theorem and differential of dy by dx e equal x is e to power x if you don't know about your own body? And so what we are talking about, Haldane wrote this book and he was talking more about, in fact, this is a special name called abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is a special name for the mechanisms which get you life out of non-life. Evolution then talks about how these things improve. So Darwin's theory of evolution is all about how these things improve and the survival of the fittest and the improvement by evolution. But the first form is abiogenesis. But then there is a very famous book by a physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, in 1944 called What is Life? Now, the problem for physicists, the mystery is, the sort of remarkable thing about life is that everything that they study is really usually dead. And so they wonder, what is life? And there is a famous law in physics called the second law of thermodynamics, which says that the disorder always increases. So if you leave anything, disorder will increase. This said that entropy will increase. Entropy is a measure of the disorder, but life defies that. Life is an ordered system. Inside our body, everything is ordered. And we do this thing, which is opposite of what physics says. Physics in a physics system doesn't just go and that's why if you heat something, it will cool and gradually cool till it becomes at the ambient temperature. But our body temperatures are maintained at 36 degrees, even though the external temperature may be 2 degrees, 4 degrees, 20 degrees, 40 degrees, but our temperature is maintained. This is called homeostasis. In physics, this doesn't happen. In physics, things move from a high temperature to a low temperature continuously. So this is where Schrödinger was very intrigued, that how is this happen? And also, the other important part about life is that life replicates itself. Now, in physics, when you can have nuclear fusion, that a radioactive thing can break into two, etc., but it doesn't make an exact copy of itself. So this idea of replication was really enormous. I mean, Schrödinger really was, he imagined that there is some non-crystalline, non-periodic thing in which all the information is stored, which makes copies of us and so on. You all know, we all began with a single cell. And now we are 40 trillion cells or whatever, by continuous growth of cells, multiplication, division of cells, and so on and so forth. How is this maintained? And this is what Schrödinger was there. And he postulated something like, he didn't use the word genes, but he postulated something like genes over there. In fact, Crick and Watson, when they discovered the structure of the DNA as the double helix, acknowledged that they were inspired by Schrödinger's book, where he said there is something. Now, everybody's talking about coding, to make apps. Coding is most important in biology. We are coded people, coded by the DNA, the RNA, and the proteins and everything that is going on. And this is why it is very interesting. But we didn't understand that. So it was only the 50s when Crick and Watson discovered the structure of the DNA and found that it is a double helix. of base pairs called A, T, C, G, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, and adenine is always connected to thymine, cytosine is always connected to guanine, and so on. And again, there's no fight. They could do this because physics had provided them with X-rays and X-ray crystallography, and they can see the X-ray pattern of the DNA molecules, and from interpreting that X-ray pattern, they came to this thing. So it's not a fight between physics versus biology, but it is just that biology is more complex and needs a higher order this thing. Now, why I'm talking to you about is that if you have been looking at the vaccine thing for the coronavirus, the word RNA has become part of common vocabulary. The part genetic code has become part of common vocabulary. And in fact, the virus is not even a live form. If you look at the definition of what is a living thing, virus doesn't come in it. Virus doesn't even have a cell. See, many people I've seen in public, they are talking about germs and bacteria and viruses in the same breath. No. Bacteria are single cell organisms, but viruses don't even have a full cell structure. They are just protein and the RNA or the DNA. In fact, there's a Baltimore classification for the type of viruses depending upon the DNA and the RNA and so on. But forget that. Basically, it is protein and a replicating mechanism. And look at the amount of damage the coronavirus has done. I mean, we've got all these Rafale aircraft, this, that, whatever, but the coronavirus is already in India, killed more than 160,000 people, infected 1 crore people, caused the kind of damage it has done. And it actually is not a living form. If you talk to the body, it is not. It is that threshold because it can live only in a host. And it lives. So when the coronavirus has spread, it has not spread, it has no wings. We took it with us. We took it with us in our cars, in our aeroplane, in our everything that we went. We took it along. It had no power to move on its own. It cannot do anything on its own. It has to find some host in which then the RNA starts replicating. And now the new vaccine technology is called a messenger RNA technology. Why? What my point is really this, that these are very exciting times to be in. So, medicine in the past largely cured diseases. And so if you had now, you know, this antibiotic survey, there was a time when, for example, we had no cure for tuberculosis, we had no cure for typhoid, we had no cure for malaria, many other things. But over time, we have created these medicines. But today, a completely new thing is coming up, which is called cellular therapy, which is saying that I will not give you another chemical compound to fight. I will engineer your cells. In fact, in the most challenging thing of cancer, they're now using immunocell therapy. So they're picking out cells, reprogramming those cells to be able to fight. And because your immune system was a little weak, it is trying to make it better, and immunocell therapy is coming up. More and more, we are looking at cells. Cells are the basic constituents of life matter. Just like Democritus talked about atom as the smallest element of physics or in chemistry, the cell is the smallest. But a cell, just like the atom has a lot of internal structure, the cell has a lot of infrastructure, including mitochondria, this, that, whatever. And the future is all about cellular biology and things being looked at the cellular level. I just wanted to convey to you the excitement, but the important point that is remaining, and I will use that towards wrapping up before I ask you to ask questions, is for a long time we did not understand how these things happen. In fact, the structure of the cell for the first time was seen by Robert Hooke around the same time as Isaac Newton. So Isaac Newton, Robert Hooke are contemporary. Robert Hooke had made the first microscope. And first time he saw the structure of the cells, and he used the word cells because they were like small cabins in a monastery where monks used to be there. A lot of biology was done by monks. Gregor Mendel was a monk, etc., etc. And therefore, he used the word cells for them. And then when Liu and Hawk had a better microscope, they discovered more and more cells. So the basic structure is a cell, but there are stem cells which can become all kinds of cells. So when we have a body, we have various cells. We have muscle cells, tissue cells, brain cells, liver cells, kidney cells. This is a process called cellular differentiation, which is very different from ordinary chemistry. Ordinary chemistry just looks at the outer electron and has ionic bonds or covalent bonds or whatever, and carbon has several kinds of bonds, 2, 3, 4, etc., but nothing compared to the wonder of biology. So when cells become, and mostly cellular differentiation was a one-way phenomenon. You had what you called a stem cell, as still capable, and once it differentiated, you could not put it back. Until, of course, a few years ago, some people got a Nobel Prize for taking a fully differentiated cell and putting it back, and then reprogramming it, and so on and so forth. Cancers are cells which have gone berserk. And this is one of the important things. So what we are looking at, and now the point that we are saying is that when we looked at all this, and right from evolution talks about a random mutation. Cancer cells talk about random mutation. Many other things talk about random mutation. It is here now that quantum starts coming into play. Because when we start wondering, so why do the mutations happen? So they will believe that it happened because of X-rays, it happened because of ultraviolet, it happened because of some other things. But eventually people are realizing that quantum phenomena are responsible for many of these things. Or it can be for aging, it can be for diseases, it can be for many other things. Now, even Darwin's theory of evolution, many mathematicians actually challenged that, because they said if this is going to happen from trial and error, it would take enormous amounts of time. It cannot happen in a few millions of years. Millions of years is too short for evolution by trial and error. And many people now believe that it is quantum tunneling which is responsible for all these things, all these mutations and so on. Go back to where I said the DNA is a double helix with A, T, and CG as the backbone, and they're connected through hydrogen bonds. And when some of these changeover go from one pair to another pair, that is what mutation is. It can be for bad, it can be for good, whatever. And the time taken here is much less. Mutations between these kind of things happen in 0.63 milliseconds, etc. Therefore, it is possible to reconcile Darwin's evolutionary theory with some of these things by looking at this. So, two things. For a long time, couple of 100 years, we had started understanding the building blocks, but we didn't know what is happening. Once we understood this, especially with the DNA, RNA, and thing, then what happened is we could have a branch called synthetic biology, where you could see so far, whether you bred horses or crossbred plants or did a new variety in agriculture, this was all by looking at what you already had as a genetic pool. Now you're saying, no, if I know this is what the DNA is about, I can actually pick that up and create a completely synthetic kind of a thing. So you can create a thing. And Craig Winter has done this in 2010 or so. He created artificial. And that is why the conspiracy theory came up. See, with respect to COVID-19, there's a conspiracy theory that some people made this in a lab and then it went out and so on and so forth. Because you can do this. You can create viruses in the lab, you can create bacteria in the lab, and this is a field called synthetic biology. You can do both kinds of things. There's a technology called CRISPR-Cas9 with you can edit existing genes, or you can create new genes and put them together. So synthetic biology, quantum biology, this is taking us to a completely new world. And as I said, this is why the spotlight is on biology, because you can. And what is very interesting, and some people may be threatened at that idea, see, so far what we did in science was to try to understand what exists. We are now coming to something which is actually, some of you might have heard this word called Anthropocene age. And in fact, many of you might have seen the news item that in the year 2020, man-made materials were more than the natural biomass. And this is where the big change is happening. So far, we were trying to see how things happen. So if this is happening in nature, whatever it is, tuberculosis, cancer, this, that, how do we deal with it? Today, we are talking about, if we create this, what will its properties be? What will the form be? So we'll have synthetic life, we have some quantum life, we have all kinds of things. And It's therefore a very interesting area to be in. And I just want to say that this is something you might pursue different areas of this, whatever you like and so on. But this is now center stage. Just like 100 years ago, physics was center stage. Quantum physics was taking shape. Einstein in 1 year, 1905, produced 4 papers. The Brownian movement, the photoelectric effect, the theory of special relativity, and the equation E is equal to mc square. Amazing kind of a discovery. We are in a similar state for biology today, that we are going to have. And then the whole thing, it was not, Heisenberg, Schrodinger, Max-Born, Max Planck, all these people were working and completely new physics was created, of which we are seeing the results. The nuclear bomb, the hydrogen bomb, the moon mission, the planets, and now that we are actually going to moon, Mars, etc., is all a result of the big changes that happened in physics. We will have similar changes because of a big understanding of biology now. Aging and death are seen as a problem which is now understood. The final availability of solutions may take time, but it has been understood what causes aging. There are 9 hallmarks of aging. Something, antioxidants are there, telomeres are there, etc. It is just like, and again, I'll go back to you. Most of you in your class 8 level physics must have studied that the escape velocity out of the gravitational pull is 7 miles per second or 11.2 kilometers per second. And therefore, you know that if you send something with this push, it would not come back to the Earth. This calculation you do in class 8-9 physics. But to achieve this for the whole world, it took several years. This calculation could have been done by Newton 300 years ago. But we actually achieved it on, I think, 6th of October 1957, when Russia put up a Sputnik into this thing, first time. Now, of course, we have all these satellites. We are talking to each other because of satellite communication being there. Similarly, we will understand with biology aging and death and a completely new kind of a life. Longish life, long lifespan, long health span. 100 will be the new normal. And we will be doing healthy and productive kind of things. So basically, the purpose was to give you this idea that this is the most exciting field. And because it has suddenly come up, not many people are aware. If you talk to your parents and grandparents, they'll still tell you, Roorkee mein jaake civil engineering kar le beta. But that is all gone. Just completely changed. Life is very different. So I'll leave you with time because I have some other meeting later on. So I'll leave you with time for questions and so on. So Anita and Sonia, please organize questions. I'm happy to answer a few questions.
Yes, sir.
Students, the session is open for questions. Sir will be very happy to answer all the questions that you have in mind with relation to this topic. So you can write in the chat, or if you want, you can ask as well. Please write in the chat the questions that you look for, you want to answer. So one of the questions that I have in my mind is, based on computational biology, sir, what are the changes that we see happening in the human form, sir?
No, which sense? We'll see changes all around. The general principle
For
is,
example, they say that in case, since we are so much dependent on technology, we may have a very small size of the brain in future. Is that so, sir?
see, we can't say, but broadly in evolutionary biology, there's a concept of vestigial organs. So, for example, your appendix is a vestigial organ. There are so many things. Look at, see, all our 4 limbs should have been similar, but we can do very little with our feet. We can do a lot more with our hands. So with the sole of our feet, we cannot do as much as we can do with the palms of our hand. Again, it is an example of vestigial thing. We cannot move our ears in a certain direction of sound because we don't have to be so alert to sounds. Animals can move their ears to get the kind of a sound. So you're absolutely right, depending upon how it will evolve. But it is not necessary that the brains can become small. The brains may have to become larger because the kind of challenges they are taking are bigger. So now with the new kind of thing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., you may need a more developed brain, not a less developed brain. See, the assumption, if we had the same things to do, maybe we could do with a less developed brain. But because we want to do a lot more, see, today, the way you remember, let's say 100 years ago, going from one place to another would be very difficult. Today we move all across the globe without, in fact, the pandemic was caused because we move all around the globe. Now, tomorrow you will be going for to the moon. I mean, I say that our children and grandchildren will go for their honeymoon to the moon, and then they will go for something to the Mars, and so on. So they may need more highly developed brain and more technology. Okay.
So we've already landed on the Mars also.
So I would like to ask a question. That is, will there be a relation between biology and the mood swings or psychology?
Oh,
would there be a connect?
See, there is already. So there is a piece of research done on bipolar disorders, and they looked at mice, and they gave them lithium nitride, once with lithium 6 and then with lithium 7, and the behavior was different. So just one more neutron in the lithium nitride which was fed to the mice, the behavior was different. And they're looking at this to study bipolar disorders.
So there is going to be a connect between the two.
There is a connect. We have to understand the connect. The connect exists. We need to understand it better.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the question. Students, please take this opportunity. Sir is a very busy person, so please ask your questions. Or you can write it in the chat. Teachers, the session is open for you as well.
Sonia ma'am, may I ask a question? I was just
yes,
typing.
Please do.
Yeah, please.
Physics people should ask biology questions.
Yes. Good morning, sir. Sir, today I'm Anu Mishra. I teach physics at the school, and
Very today,
yes, every time I've been attending.
Do you want to switch to biology now?
You said everybody should learn biology.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. No doubts in that.
Ma'am is listening. It's music to my ears.
No doubts to that.
Yeah.
I remember a few years back when I had attended one of your workshops. It was Industrial Revolution, regarding that, the fourth Industrial Revolution. That time, a lot of importance was given to the quantum computing and things like that. But today I'm glad this is coming up, and it is coming up as more integrated. Rather, I would not like to somewhere differentiate between biology and physics. It is more of a science, and the science that we are using. So my question here is, sir, do we have advancements in by the field of science, I would rather say, where we can couple up our brain with some external intelligence? Like hum abhi bhi computers we are using, it is an extension of our brain we are using. We know how to use it, but क्या हम directly couple कर पा रहे हैं कहीं पर? कि जैसे मुझे लगा कि मेरी बुद्धि कम है तो मैं थोड़ा सा मार्केट से खरीद लूं, something like that.
So let me tell you. So Elon Musk has a company called Neuralink, which is directly connecting your brain to computers. So without having, so anything you're thinking, you're imagining, etc., all those thoughts can directly go to a computer. So you don't need an interface where you put in or push in by speaking or keyboarding or something. And this has been very useful. You must have heard of Stephen Hawking. He was totally paralyzed. And the only way he could do was to connect the brain to the computer, to his brain to the computer, and so on and so forth. So as we progress, there will be more and more of this. So that is the answer. It will be more. See, as I said in that vivid example, between understanding how to do something and actually being able to do it is a long journey. It is getting shorter and shorter these days, but it is still a long journey.
सर, तो वो दिन दूर नहीं है जब हमें लगेगा कि हमारी इंटेलिजेंस थोड़ी कम है, बच्चे की इंटेलिजेंस थोड़ी कम है, तो हम मार्केट में जाके एडिशनल इंटेलिजेंस ले लेंगे.
हाँ, श्योर. सो इनफैक्ट वो तो जब पहली बार ये आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की बात हुई थी, तो कुछ लोगों ने कहा ये जो वीक स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनके लिए है क्या, कि जो कि अपनी इंटेलिजेंस नहीं है उनको आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस दे देंगे. सो वो है. But the point is, this is actually called cognitive surplus. We always use the other abilities of other people to help ourselves. So whether it is physical abilities or intellectual abilities, both of them. So I have this famous thing which I say that in good schools, I've never studied in a school like that, but in a good school, there used to be a tradition of teaching horse riding to people. And the reason why we taught horse riding was that the horse is a difficult animal. Now, if you are timid, it will throw you out. But if you can ride a horse, you can go very far. So some of these AIs will be like that. If you are scared of AI, it will take away your job. But if you can ride on AI, you can take away other people's jobs.
Because
So there is a yes, Arun. There is a
I wanted to actually complete this one, Sonia ma'am. May
yes.
I? So it was like कि एक जमाना होता था जब हमारे पास जो ज़्यादा powerful होता था, you know, in the community, that used to be the leader of the community.
Correct,
And slowly with the things replacing the muscular power, so everybody came on the equal as far as muscular power was concerned. So I think in near future we'll not have anything like कि ये कम intelligent है, ये ज़्यादा intelligent है, and this will open up opportunity for lot more people.
Yeah, sure. See, how you put together the resources available to you. See, right from the principle of the lever, where you use the strength of that lever to add strength to yourself. And we actually now use something called leverage, which means taking advantage of anything that you have. So it will become a sum total. So just like in energies, we say sum total of kinetic energy, potential energy, and maybe self energy. Similarly, you will say all the things that you have available at your disposal, your own strength, your friend's strength, your team's strength, your opponent's weakness, all this will help decide who will be the winner.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, Niti Gulati this side, sir. I have been getting break-in my connection every now and then. I just wanted to ask you, probably you have already touched upon this and I've missed this because of the break-in connection. The way we perceive things, you know, different people perceive the same thing differently.
Yes.
So do you think there is a possibility of this quantum biology in future explaining, you know, why could it be?
Yeah. No, you don't have to go all the way to quantum. We perceive things differently because of our different positions. Now, you know that the color can be seen differently depending upon what color background you have put in. The whole movie experience is based on those pictures moving at more than 10 frames per second. We typically have them at 24 frames per second. So whatever we experience, in fact, there's a very famous experiment I was came to know of it as a child. Put one of your hand in warm water, another hand in cold water, and then put both these hands in tepid water. The two hands will feel different because they came from a different sort of, you know, starting position. So therefore, there is perfectly all right. People will perceive things differently, and there's a big debate about whether there is an absolute truth or not.
I think I probably did not ask my question right. My question actually was, let's say if I'm talking about a piece of art that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So the kind of, you know, perception that different people would have towards it aesthetically or that way.
Yeah. So this is perfectly all right. I mean, it is not only a piece of art. Anything. If there's a famous thing that we do in ethics about giving people problem depending upon the disposition. People have different responses. So the standard question is that a person whose wife is dying and needs the medicine desperately goes into a medicine shop, breaks open, gets that medicine, leaves the money there and brings it for his wife and saves the wife. What is it? Now the strict adherent is, no, he should not have broken into the thing. The one who look at this and so on. So there's a lot of, in fact, if you enjoy this kind of thing, then Michael Sandel of Harvard University has a very nice set of lectures, The Idea of Justice, where he talks about what is the right thing to do. And this depends upon your various circumstances, starting positions, perceptions, your goals. And these are, nothing is absolutely right or wrong. He talks very well about the principle of utilitarianism. So utilitarianism is about the largest good of the largest numbers. But he says that in certain cases, the Kantian philosophy works and so on.
Thank you so much, sir. You said the lecture was The Idea of Justice, right?
Yeah, Michael Sandel.
Right,
so
sir.
It's a whole series of video talks. Very good. You'll thoroughly enjoy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now I think I have to wrap up because I have another session from 11 o'clock. So thank you all very much. I hope you found this interesting, and feel free to send me messages through your coordinators if you want, because sometimes our thoughts and ideas come later in time. Okay.
Yes, students do have a lot of questions, sir. They're posted in the chat, but we'll forward it to you.
So you can collect them and we can
yes,
keep
sir.
responding
Yes,
to
sir,
them.
definitely. Anita ma'am, shall I proceed with the vote of thanks?
Yes.
Okay. First and foremost, I would like to thank our esteemed principal ma'am, who always provides the students and teachers with opportunities beyond the regular classroom curriculum. Thank you so much, ma'am. Sir, it is always an honor to listen to you. I wonder sometimes, is there any topic that you cannot, speak on? So there's no subject, I guess, that you can't touch upon and you cannot, go into depth of those. It is always an honor to listen to you, and the science department and student always look forward to your sessions. It is amazing how you always relate examples with day-to-day life, and you inspire us to always ask questions and strive to find the answers, which is actually the first step towards being a good scientist, I guess. You have introduced a new perspective and understanding to biology, particularly in this pandemic time. It takes so much importance. Thank you, sir, and we look forward to many such sessions with you. I thank our in charge, Anita ma'am, who always takes this initiative and organizes everything for the students and teachers and the parents. I thank the audience, the students, parents, and teachers who have joined this session, and hope you have got an insight into what computational biology is, and you will probably go on and study a little more on this. I thank the technical team who put forward, who helped in arranging all the technical aspects for the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. It was really, really very